Good afternoon. Let's begin here. The ANC's National Executive Committee held its planning meetings virtually on the 20th until the 23rd of January this year. The party discussed plans for the year. At the back of the January 8th statement, it says progress in addressing the challenges facing South Africa has been delayed significantly by corruption and state capture. It further says corruption not only undermines development and investment in infrastructure and basic services, but also damages trust in the country's democratic institutions as well as processes. In its statement, the party also admits that it is on a downward spiral and that unless it renews and rebuilds, it will fail in its mission to transform society. Let's speak now to ANC Spokesperson Pule Mabe. Dr. Mabe, good afternoon to you. Thank you so much for your time this afternoon. Admitting that the party is on a downward spiral is not something that is new in the public domain that we've seen, but also this has been supported by COSATU as well, your alliance partners, saying that bold action is needed because the movement is dying. There's been talk in the public domain, especially even within the ANC itself, of renewal. And we've been seeing this over and over again amidst the talk of unity. I wonder what's going to be different this time around.
Well, afternoon to your viewers. The African National Congress indeed had its ordinary National Executive Committee from the 20th to 21st and continued with the Lekgotla from the 22nd to the 23rd. This is as part of planning for the year ahead and to ensure that resolutions adopted at conferences are being implemented by the National Executive Committee of the ANC, its structures, including by the alliance partners. Of course, we have made certain acknowledgements. One, that the moral fiber of our society has been debased to a larger extent by what we might not have been doing as the African National Congress, being the party entrusted to lead the state. We acknowledged all of that. We did not wait for anyone to come and tell us that these are the challenges that the ANC faces. The ANC is the first to always acknowledge all of its challenges and then put forward a program. What we have now done for the first time, and we pronounced this in our January 8th statement when we celebrated that seminal occasion of our 110th anniversary, we said that we will roll out the Renewal Commission. And what we now did was to make sure that we now, as the National Executive Committee, begin saying, what do we want the Renewal Commission to do? Are we not going to be repeating ourselves? We've acknowledged all of these mistakes, like you are saying, since the 50th National Conference of the African National Congress. What are we going to do differently? And went further and then said, this year we're going to an occasion of our 55th National Conference. What is it that we seek to do when we arrive at that important occasion? And we then said that the committee led by former President Kgalema Motlanthe must be able to develop a framework, guidelines, that govern how cadres of the movement are expected to carry themselves towards that elective conference, including how they contest, so that we could reach that conference of corruption, buying of delegates, and all of that. Because the ANC cannot go out or come out to be saying that it wants to correct corruption out in society when it is not dealing with some of the tendencies well within its own ranks. I mean, you saw what happened in Mbashe, where a female MMC was dragged out by people claiming to be part of the security machinery of the municipality. We read again this morning that her house was again shot. These are instances of gender-based violence, things that we cannot tolerate at the African National Congress. You saw what happened to a councillor of the ANC out in Nkangala, where there were people advancing a program unknown to any one of us.
Now,
fighting with a regional executive committee member of the ANC while he was busy executing his own responsibilities. So I'm mentioning this as part of examples. You see what happens in KwaZulu-Natal, where, I mean, you just heard now, where councillors are being killed. This cannot be right. Now, it is not the duty It's not just the ANC. All of the political parties that are contesting in the democratic space ought to understand that the building of better and safer communities is not just a task that must be fulfilled by the ANC.
So
it is a task that all political parties working together must be able to fulfill. In fact, one of the things, and I know that you might want to ask me another question.
Yes,
one
I
of the
do.
things that we spoke about, let me just conclude this point so that as we speak, I could be able to expatiate. One of the things that we spoke about was around social compact, where we also said there is also a role expected to be played by business to allow us to be able to resolve some of the economic challenges that we are facing. I'm sure the census that is being undertaken as we speak now will be able to demonstrate and display that a number of our people are unemployed. They find themselves without any form of social security. There are things, there's a conversation that we must have as the people of this country. What is it that we are doing, or what is to be done to resolve the problems of our people? I sure this matriculate who have just emerged so successfully, better than the year before, with such passes, that the country that they are going to inherit will be one that can be able to resolve their own challenges, one where they could have a future and one where they could be able to thrive.
Do you think, though, all of that, that you've mentioned, as well as the statement that you've put out, because the statement the ANC has put out also talks about this service delivery cluster that is also going to be put in place in order to make sure that you hold those at local government level to account. Will this be enough, though, to persuade the voters to vote for you? Because President Cyril Ramaphosa said that the people expressed their dissatisfaction with the organization and government by staying away in large numbers. We saw this at the local government elections. Is this going to be enough to persuade them to come out in 2024?
Well, remember, we can only say that something is sufficient when it is so endorsed by the people it seeks to serve. The ANC comes up with mechanisms, including what it is now coming up with, that let us have forums that deal with service delivery. Or, in fact, our statement even goes further to say, look at any other mechanism that will be able to address the problems and challenges of our people on the ground. So we will not say whether this is sufficient or not. What we are seeking to do is to build a compact with the people of this country. And we can only do so when we work with them. You see, we are not going to go out and impose our own ideas to the people without their own affirmation. We want the people on the ground to be able to affirm the approaches that we are putting forward to resolve their problems. Now, all we know is that a better South Africa, better communities, can only be built when that work is being done with the people themselves.
And when we talk about, this process of renewal and transparency, and as you say that, there's going to be this work that will be done by the former President Motlanthe in that commission to be able to put some guidelines for campaigning. We saw in the public domain an audio recording that has been put out where the president was talking about some public funds that he's aware of being used for some party campaigning. Now, Scopa has sent questions to the president to reply in 10 days. I wonder what is the view of the ANC in that matter?
Well, matters that relate to the work of Parliament in the normal course are ordinarily left to our own caucus. We believe that our caucus, our president, and structures that are there in the public domain where we account to members of the general public are sufficient enough for us to be able to express ourselves. It is not the duty of the ANC to express itself where it has got structures that can deal with that. We've got our own caucus. We've got our own portfolio committees. They've got the requisite capacity to be able to deal with some of this. What we can tell you is that we have opted for transparency. We opted for a democratic state. This is what the liberation of the people of South Africa was all about. We did not opt for ourselves. The ANC not about just making sure that it protects itself there in that space. No. It understood that as it maneuvers, it has bestowed on itself this task of leading society. Now, the only way we can be able to lead society effectively is when the people we lead join us with the necessary trust and confidence. Now, we came out in our statement and said there seems to be a loss of trust and confidence. That compact that we had built with the people of South Africa over a period of time seems to have been lost. What are the things that we need to do? I mean, we had MISTRA presenting to us why we lost our electoral fortunes. The things that we too had made an observation on, that we can no longer afford to have leaders who are self-seeking and self-serving, not necessarily pursuing the interest of the people on whose behalf we had said we shall lead or govern. So all of these observations were made every part. Now we're coming out and saying, how do we correct this? And out of correcting this, we then said, one, even on the State Capture Commission, we said we must have a dedicated committee of the African National Congress comprising of National Executive Committee and other eminent members of society, which shall be entrusted with dealing with the analysis of that kind of a report, understanding how this impacts on the organization itself, being able to then advise on the actions that ought to be taken. We said the very Renewal Commission, the Integrity Committee that we have, the disciplinary committees that we have in the African National Congress have got to be get up to be able to act on what will then appear glaringly to be acts of misconduct. You will remember that at our own seminal occasion of the 2016 National General Council, as well as the 2017 Policy Conference, we had spoken about the restoration of the integrity of the African National Congress. Now, restoring our own integrity and credibility and standing in society is going to require that we take very unpopular decisions. These decisions mean that should a leader or a member of the ANC, regardless of the position they hold, be found to be wanting, we must be able to take action against them.
All right,
regardless of who they are in the organization. We do this because the ANC must be able to live beyond those of us who are leading it today. The ANC must be able to still express itself beyond our generation.
Mr. Mabe, unfortunately, we are out of time, but I can't let you go without asking you this. If you can be very brief for us. Times Live says that some sources have told its reporters that there was a debate at the party's National Executive Committee meeting last week about how the bloated staff and ghost workers were the biggest contributor to the party's financial woes. It further says that the call to start a Section 189 process apparently was made by you. Is this true?
Well, I don't think that. Look, I do not answer to multiple choice questions of true or false. What I can tell you.
But is it true? Did you make this call?
Well. It's not necessary for me to really legitimize things that are out in the public without me speaking. What I can tell you, and this is now in the statement of the ANC, as part of what we are saying around the reorganization, was that we've got to look at ways and means through which the ANC could be able to function. One, make it affordable for the organization to be able to finance its own affairs and operations, allow the movement to still achieve its work of running campaigns, organizing, and all of that. So the organization has got to look at a number of things.
Does that include Section 189?
Well, just to remind you, perhaps you have forgotten, because I've seen the article you are referring to. Perhaps you have forgotten. This point was placed in the public domain long time ago. The ANC has said, as part of the things that it might have to consider to deal with its own challenges, could be retrenchment, could be reorganization, and all of that. I mean, let me give an example with you. If you work for the SABC and for some 3-4 months, at one point, you are not being paid, the SABC has now has to say to you that can it now continue to function as a going concern? Is it in a position to fulfill its obligation to you as its own employee?
All right.
This is what the ANC has to be doing. The ANC must say, are we able to discharge our obligation to our own employees? If we can't, what is the recourse that we have legally? What are we then supposed to say to those that are in our employ so that they could have certainty? Remember, budget is about planning. What do you wait to plan? This month end, I'm going to buy my son or daughter Christmas clothes. I'm going to pay rent and all of that. You say that out of knowing or the knowledge that is how much you're going to be earning. So now, when organizations can no longer be able to fulfill that task because they are unable to at least collect or raise sufficient money because of the legal paradigm that is out there, it ought to then say to those that it is obligated to that we are now challenged, and we believe that with this challenge, this is the recourse we ought to take.
All right.
Applying the relevant and requisite legal parameters.
Ntate Mabe, sadly, we're out of time. Thank you so much, though, for availing yourself this afternoon. That was ANC Spokesperson Pule Mabe.